This Minnesota Bound podcast is brought to you by Connecticut, the Department of Natural Resources from Minnesota, the wonderful Star Banks, and Travel North Dakota. Hey, good day again, folks. Welcome to another Minnesota Bound podcast. Today, Ron Schara is your host, and I'm very privileged to have with me today one of my favorite people, Brian Brosdahl from northern Minnesota, a Twin Cities kid, a fishing nut when he was a boy. And Brian is joining us. We're going to chat about his life and his fishing career so far. Brian, welcome to Minnesota Bound Podcast.
Well, thanks for having me, Ron. What an introduction.
Well, this is off the top of my head, bro. I can't. But before we get any further, let's share with the folks how you and I met. It was a long time ago. Minnesota Bound Television was still pretty much in its infancy, and I heard about a guy that liked to catch big bluegills, and that was you. And so we went up fishing one day in a small lake that will remain unnamed. In fact, I don't even remember the name, and we had a good day.
Oh, that was fun, and I do remember that day. And in the humble beginnings, I had an older a 17-foot Crestliner boat and a 90-horse motor, but I had all the tricks in there early. I always stayed up on electronics, but I remember meeting you, and I was hoping that the fish we're going to go nuts. And we caught a lot of fish. And I'd like to see a better bite every time, but I think we had a really good bite.
Yeah, we did. We caught some big ones. And here's a couple things I remember, bro. And that is when I wrote the script, I thought about this young guy who covets bluegills. And we had a chat about your philosophy on why Minnesota's lakes are so full of stunted bluegills, and the 9, 10, 11 inchers that you sought out were so rare. And you started talking about what Minnesota has done wrong over the years. Do you recall that conversation?
Yes.
And the gist of it was we catch and keep too many of the big ones, right?
That's the simple fact, and why there's less fish. It's all pressure and angler harvest related.
And anyway, out of that TV episode, because I like to put titles on my stories, I called you Bluegill Bro, and that nickname stuck.
Oh, I was raised in the wild by bluegills, and as I got older, I broke away from the colony.
Well, you catch everything now, but you were Bluegill Bro back then.
They're still my favorite fish. If you look at a true giant bluegill, and their colors can be any range of colors from really dark purple to really bright yellow. There's nothing more tropical in our water. Jumbo perch are real colorful in the fall, but bluegills have such a good tropical look to them, and they got heart. I mean, they know they can't outfight you in a straight pull away battle, so they start spinning in a circle and use their whole body as a rudder, and they'll tangle you around weeds and even be right there in front of your hook and not bite. They're really cool fish, and it's not their fault that they taste so good.
Well, that's true. Well, bro, you raised some points back then. I remember that part of it was somehow you understood the biology of bluegills, and when we take the big males out, that apparently leads to a population of stunted bluegills, and subsequently fish biologists, fish researchers have verified that, and now it's, to me, it's taken way too long, but our DNR, Minnesota DNR, is working right now to change bag limits on many lakes, a couple hundred of them, from 10 to 5 or more to 10. I forget totally, but some lakes will have 5 limits. Some will have 10 limits in an effort to correct the situation and have bigger bluegills. What do you think of the plan generally?
I really like it, and I've always been a fan of, even back then I would always preach to people, don't keep a bluegill over 9 inches. Don't let it even touch 9 inches, because a bluegill 7.5 to 8 3/4 is really a nice eating size fish, and it's only a forkful of meat difference. And we don't want to wreck the lake for a forkful of meat. The thing is, I love catching them, and I know a lot of people love catching them. The eating's just the last part of it, So I always like to go out and catch them, and if we're going to have some, we'll have some smaller ones. And my father taught me that 40 years ago. When we threw back big gills, I go, "Why are we throwing these back?" He said, "Because these are rare and they need to stay in the lake, and we keep smaller ones." And people laughed at it. People thought we were nuts. We were lucky enough to bump into some big panfish. Why wouldn't you just knife them? But we just didn't think that way. We got plenty of fish to eat, more than you could possibly eat. You got a lot of different species, and so we enjoyed fishing. Kept some medium-sized bluegills and crappies. We never worried about anything but bluegills at the time, because, well, quite honestly, back then every lake had big crappies, but the bluegills were already being depleted. And fast forwarding into the future, it was funny. I still see the people who are laughing about it today, but these people, they wouldn't hesitate about keeping anything of wrong size and out of limit. They just weren't good characters, period. Some of the people that you'd see fishing on the lakes or you'd bump into in the places that we fish. But people who understand what's really going on, most of them will not keep a big bluegill. The ones who do, well, let's just say you can't change everybody, and we don't need to change every lake. Those people can go to a lake that doesn't have this moniker on it, and it's just nice being able to save some of these lakes so that your children's children can go there and catch a big bluegill and see what all the fun is about. And if we just let these people, with all the technology, just whack them out of existence, we could do it. We could do most of that in one winter. Is educated and fast moving and agile, and seems like a lot, on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Lakes out in the middle of nowhere are sure busy, and seems like people have time and technology, and there's a lot to learn to find the lakes that do have the big ones. It wouldn't take long to destroy everything we got in today's.
Well, bro, we've already done that on dozens and dozens of lakes. For example, an interesting research survey showed Fuller's Tackle in Park Rapids for 50 years had a fishing contest. And somebody from DNR recorded all of the winning categories over those 50 years. And interestingly, only 2 categories showed that it took a smaller fish to win the championship than any of the other species. Those 2 species were northern pike and bluegills. In other words, over the 50 years, it took, way back when, it may have taken a 20-pound northern pike to win. And then after 50 years, it was like an 8-pounder or a 10-pounder to win. And bluegills, it used to be maybe 12, 13 inches. Then it was down to 10 or whatever. So those 2 species, northern pike and bluegills, have been exploited the most in this state. Now, DNR, has launched this new effort, reducing the limits. But to my knowledge, there's no size limits on any of these. And I'm sort of surprised at that, because some people, as you know, bro, they might just take their 5 fish, come in, They could all be 10 inchers, but then, they'd be tempted. They could go back out again in the evening. So I'm not sure if we're stiff enough there with our rules.
No, not even close. And I got to say, I've been out guiding for walleyes on lakes that have really big sunfish that have a 5 limit, and you'll see the boat in the morning, and then you'll see the boat later, but you don't see them in the afternoon. So, the statewide limit does not help in that regard. And, there's still lakes that produce big fish because they're super fertile, but we're going to have nothing here if you just let anybody do anything they want. Of course, we'd have anarchy in the world, but let them have their lakes where they can do what they want, and let some people who want to catch a big bluegill have a lake. Now, my toolbox suggestion at the first panfish meeting I went to, and I went there, I paid my own gas money, and it was really nice. I really enjoy talking with the people from the DNR. I like their perspective. And I know sometimes it can wear them out to talk to, people who aren't educated like they are in fishery and biology. But I never took those courses, and I know what I know. So I really enjoy talking to them, and I know they know that 1/9 is a great thing. The reason we do 1/9, because if you go absolutely nothing over 9, the argument, my grandkid, if he catches one, can I mount it? Well, yeah, mount it. Mounting one bluegill never killed off the colony, and so it's attracting them with something sweet, something good. And doesn't mean you have to mount any, but I'm saying 1 over. But where we hit a roadblock, it is with the enforcement community, and I've asked them point blank. I said, why don't you want to do a 1/9? Because I think they're the ones that are turning it down. They pull up on a pontoon with 5, 6, 7 people, and they got a live well full of fish. They said, that's so much work. Well, you don't want to do it, but somebody out there will do it for the money you're getting paid. And I hate to say that, but you'll measure walleyes. You'll measure hundreds, thousands of walleyes. If you can buy a pair of shoes, you can measure a bluegill. And I don't want to knock this guy. I get along great with him. Some of them can be, they got the power, so they could be kind of, do their little thing. But I get along with them, and I'm there to help them if something happens. You're on the lake in an emergency, and there's a lot of people like that. But 1/9. You get a lake with the 5 limit lakes. I pulled a guy out that was stuck on a lake, and I said, how'd you do? He goes, we don't want to tell you. And I said, well, you probably did good, because the barometric pressure was right, and you guys were fishing in a bluegill spot. And I said, but the bluegills will get barotrauma where you're fishing. And he goes, yeah. He goes, well, we sorted all day, and we got all of our fish were 1.3 pounds and better. And I'm like,
boy.
How many fish did you catch? Well, we don't want to tell you. We probably caught 80. And he knew that every one of those fish he threw back was dead. And there's so many people. Now bring the wheel fish house, the ice castles, and all these big houses, and they drop it on a body of water. Well, it's only 28 feet. Well, even bluegills, you could see a little tiny bubble in the back of their throat. They're done. And some of them make it. Some of them don't make it.
Yeah, bro, let me, I think we have to take a little break here.
Sure.
But when we come back, let's talk about that winter fishing scene, and truly appreciate your concern and input about preserving our big bluegills. And I think the lesson there is if we all do it, it will work. If a few people violate the spirit of the rules, it won't work. But anyway, bro, we'll get back to you. This Minnesota Bound podcast is brought to you by Connecticut, the makers of Great Water, our DNR, and Star Bank, and Travel, North Dakota. Before we get back to bro, we're going to talk about ice fishing, but let me talk to you about the DNR here. Most of us are very familiar with that organization, but here are some things perhaps you don't know. DNR, of course, manages our Minnesota wildlife management areas. There are like 1,440 of these, and they are open to the public for mostly for wildlife viewing and hunting. And they are managed by DNR. They maintain hunter walking trails there. They plant food plots for wildlife there, and they also improve these wildlife areas with the prairie and grasslands, which is great nesting cover for pheasants, songbirds, and you name it. If you want to find out more about Minnesota's wildlife management areas, you can go to their website, www.mndnr.gov/WMAS. And the more you know about what our DNR does, the better. We're going to get back to my special guest here, Brian Brosdahl, whom I've nicknamed Bluegill Bro, but now he kind of says he's a walleye bro or something like that. But Bluegill Bro, I remember you and your wife you were renting little shacks on the north side of Leech Lake there near Cass Lake, trying to make a living. You were a guide, and now congratulations to you. You've got a lot of sponsors. You still do some guiding, but you also give seminars all over the upper Midwest and even to the east, often about ice fishing. So how did this all happen?
Well, it's so hard to say because I don't even know it's happening, because when you're immersed in something and you're busy and you go from one thing to the next, you look back and you're like, how this all happened? Well, you just stay busy in it. If you love fishing or if you love hunting, you can do it. You give up stuff because there's better ways to earn a living out there. As I have clients in my boat once in a while, and you're just like, wow, those guys make a lot of dough, and they got a great job. But I love what I do. I like being around the sport of fishing, and I like talking to people because, like I enjoy talking to a fisheries biologist, or I even enjoy talking to a game warden. They have a lot of adventures. I love talking to people who just want to go fishing, even if they're just beginners or they're experts. You could learn something from a beginner and an expert on just the excitement of going. And so early on, I picked up some sponsors, and I didn't even read the contract that there was cash in there. And I brought home a sponsorship, honestly, from Northland Tackle, and I knew I was getting stuff, but you sign because you want to be loyal. And I get home and I showed Heather, and she says, you're getting money. And I said, oh, am I? And I look, and I felt a little embarrassed, and I'm like, and she goes, could you get more of these?
Well, Bluegill, yeah. Do you have you kept track of how many days, both summer and winter, that you spend trying to catch a fish?
Oh, if I have someone asked me that when I was guiding, they go, what do you do when you're not guiding? I said, I go fishing, of course. And so, and I'll keep track of schools of fish, and or I'll do something I like to do. I mean, the reason I guide for walleyes, I don't want to be known as a walleye guy, because I want to be known that I can get people their walleyes. I still love the panfish. They're my favorite. So when I have time off, I go fish for panfish. What I like about them, you're using ultralight gear. And,
yes,
kind of like the trout fishermen on a small stream in the Arrowhead, pitching spinners in between the trees to catch a little brookie that's tiny, but it's big for a brookie. I chase for bluegills just to try to catch a small fish that's bigger than another small fish. That's the insane part about it. But you get one that is a real big one. Trying to get one that's a 10-inch bluegill's huge, 11's super big, and 12's are rare.
Yes.
12 to 13, yes. They're out there and people get them. And it's an exciting day just to catch one of those, because when you're bluegill fishing, you catch crappies, you catch perch, you catch largemouth bass, you catch northerns, you catch walleyes. Everything bites on that light stuff. And it also goes to show you all these other critters that live in the lake eat bugs too, because a lot of the stuff you're using is insect, related stuff. So at Northland Tackle, a lot of my input was on the micro stuff that catches panfish. And when I first started, we designed the bro bug, which looked very alien. That was crazy wild stuff back then. It wasn't, had big eyes and looked like a larva or an alien or something. But people loved it, and they caught a lot of fish on them. And then, so micro, not too micro, because remember, we're still in Minnesota or the Midwest. You don't need super micro stuff in non-pressured areas, but there are areas that get a lot of pressure. Southern Wisconsin on the border of the river backwaters, and Michigan, they got red ears, which, you might as well just throw your rod at the lake and drive away because they're hard to catch.
Hi there, Ron Schara here for Star Bank. If you're putting your money into mega banks down the street, who knows where that money's being used? It's time to make the switch. Bank locally. Keep your money local with a community bank that actually cares about you, your family, your business, and your goals. Let me give you some advice from personal experience. Check out the bank we use at Minnesota Bound. Try Minnesota's own Star Bank. You can find them online at starbank.net. When you call Star Bank, you actually hear a real living person answering the phone. Star Bank has 10 convenient locations around Minnesota to serve you and all the mobile banking products that you need to manage your money. From Maple Lake to Elbow Lake, Eagle Bend to Eden Prairie. Check out all that Star Bank has to offer at starbank.net.
Bro, let me switch topics here a little bit. You've also made your mark as an ice angler, especially giving seminars to other people about ice fishing. You spend a lot of time on the ice. We're coming up to another winter here in Minnesota, maybe even earlier than most people are thinking, but that remains to be seen. Sadly, a lot of ice anglers rush the season. They should not do that. I'm sure you agree. But if somebody has never ice fished before, what are a few things you would say?
Well, safety before anything, because the recommended thickness of ice is 4 inches by the DNR safety standards, and if you're on any less, don't show yourself out on ice that's less. So you're not helping the industry at all. If you're taking a risk, you're going to get other people to take that risk, and there's nothing worse than challenging someone that risks their life. Go out 4 inches of ice, be safe, have flotation with you. Even if you're going light, you can wear a life jacket. If you're out by yourself, you want to make sure you have spikes to pull yourself out. Your fingernails aren't going to grab on ice. You're going to need spikes, and you can have retractable spikes so that you don't get stabbed by them. But a bucket, just a light house bottom, or a small fish house. I use a little one-man house, and I pack it full of gear, and I pull it behind me with a rope. Well, why do that? Because then the house is behind you a little ways. You don't have the same weight by you. And I'm not a dainty person, so I want to spread out my weight as much as possible. And then there's a rope. If you do happen to go through, someone could grab that rope and pull you out. And so going with friends is always good. And first ice is the most work. If you're not working hard on first ice, you're skimping. And I see it all the time. I drill or chisel. I drill, and I measure the ice the whole way of everywhere I go, whether it be on Winnebagosh or Cutfoot or Leech Lake. I drill my whole way out there. And there's times you can use the clear ice to look at the thickness by following a crack, and you can see that it's consistent. But if it's under snow, that's spooky stuff. And so it's a lot of work. And even as you get into this early ice stuff, you'll hear. I heard someone the other day, someone that's in fishing and doing a show, and they're talking about how I'm fine with 2 inches of ice. You can never say that. It's 4. If they say 4 is the recommended, you got to do 4. And especially if you're in the industry, and anything less, it's taking your risks. And
that's 4 inches of just walking, not any vehicles.
Yeah, just walking, and you start getting 6, 7, 8 inches of ice. You could take a machine, but you still have to drill the whole way, and that's where I'm lucky. I got petite little Heather to ride the machine out, and I drill and I wave her up to the spot, and then I have her wait there, and then I walk. So I get a lot of walking in, and that's where it becomes a mess if we get a lot of snow on early ice, because then you're walking in slush. Because as soon as you drill, it floods the area. But there's a lot of cheaters around here. As soon as I drill and I make it out there, they just go.
Yeah.
They follow.
Well, another bit of advice, of course, is always talk to bait shops, etc., and follow other people. Bro, let's take a short break here because I want to talk about we're in the throes of hunting. And when you say hunting, that means in part North Dakota. North Dakota is legendary as a hunting place, perhaps most famous for waterfowl hunting. But North Dakota, with its wide open spaces, etc., and lots of grassland, has become and still is a remarkable state for pheasants, especially in the southeast corner, southern part of the state. But also, get this, northwest North Dakota has a surprisingly number of pheasants, depending on a period of mild winter, so to speak, because some wildlife in North Dakota goes up and down depending on your winter. But you're certainly invited to check out North Dakota and go visit this website, which is called visit legendarynorthdakota.com. That's legendarynd.com, and experience some world-class hunting. I've been there. I'll vouch for that. We're getting back to Brian Brosdahl here. Brian, we're just about ready to finish up here, but what keeps you going? I watch you on Facebook, etc. You and Al Lynn or some others I know. You have this. You can't get enough of fishing. How did that happen?
Well, I was introduced into fishing as a young kid, and when I was in the Twin Cities, I just didn't live in the cities. I lived right now where there's a federal park. Our house was on the Mississippi River, and I had a boat tied up to a tree down there. And at the age of 9, I was running the river by myself, and it was fun. It was adventurous. I felt like, the other kids were like going over to each other's houses and like watching something or just sitting around. And even back then, my sister-in-law said, "Why do you fish so much?" And this is where she said I was an old man in a kid's body, but I said, because I fish to be in cool places, and then I came up with extraordinary. I fish to be in extraordinary places because when I'm on the river, I see birds and turtles when they're nesting, and catch big fish and lots of fish, and seining minnows or using plastics, and just being around it, and all the stuff you see, just what the water does, how you could read it like a book when you're traveling upriver and seeing. I learned as a kid, you don't run into a spot that's creating turbulence. There's a rock ahead of it.
Yeah, for sure.
You learn to read it quick. And I
Yes.
was always taught, if you break it, you fix it. So I had a tackle box with props, cotter pins, and simple motors that, you just knock I didn't never knock the lower unit off because I learned to read it fast. And you always fish upriver. I broke down going downriver once and had to row my boat from St. Anthony up to right on the north edge of Brooklyn Center to Fridley. And I said I'd never do that again. Where you can't move your arms, I had to get out and pull the boat on flats. And so I always fished up.
Well, bro, those are fascinating stories, and I think a lot of us could echo some of the same experiences you had, but you've gone on to some wonderful accomplishments in the fishing industry, and we take our hat off to you and want to thank you for joining us today on the Minnesota Bound podcast. Thanks, bro, for joining us.
Well, thanks for having me, and I just want people to fish. I want everybody to get out fishing, and I appreciate it. And follow the adventures this winter. Well, I'll post them when I can.
What is your website?
It's Brian Brosdahl on Facebook, but look up anything Brian Brosdahl or Bro or College of Ice, and you'll be able to follow what we do. Bro's Guide Service is my guide service, but that's very limited in the winter because it kind of gets I get promotion heavy, and but definitely if you're thinking about getting out next summer, you can go to Bro's Guide Service. But follow me at College of Ice or Brian Brosdahl, and I'm in all the social media, Twitter, Facebook, and that stuff, and we'll definitely. I got a deer hunt for a couple hours at least, and.
Well, my advice too, if folks see you on the lake in the summer, just follow you. That's the way they should do.
That's unfortunately I have, instead of having one back anchor, the Talon anchor from Minn Kota, I have two, so it's pretty hard to miss me. I'm the walleye boat that looks like the bass boat, and I do have quite a following out there, even though I don't want it.
Yeah, I hear you. Bro, thank you again. I want to remind folks this Minnesota Bound podcast brought to you by DNR, Minnesota Department of Natural Resources, the wonderful Star Bank, and Connecticut. Connecticut, by the way, one of my favorite sponsors, because I have Connecticut water treatment in my home, and I can't exclaim about it enough. My house had water that was full of iron, and we had the Connecticut system put in there, and all the iron has gone away. The water coming out of the faucet is just as good as anything you would buy in plastic waters bottles, so you don't need those. It's low salt, takes no electricity. It's really high tech water treatment for you, and gets rid of all the even things like rotten egg smells, etc. That's Connecticut. So you can visit Connecticut.com. That's KINETICO.com. Visit Connecticut.com. You'll know what I'm talking about. I can't recommend it high enough. So I thank you to Brian Brosdahl one more time, and thank you for listening to this Minnesota Bound podcast. I'm Ron Schara, and good fishing, good hunting.